What is going on, everyone? Welcome into the Brand Partial Show. So let's talk some NFL football. And so I wanted to start talking, San Francisco 49ers. So San Francisco, can Nick Bosa follow up a year he had like in 2022 Defensive Player of the Year? Can he follow up a year like that this year? I was listening to Kyle Shanahan's press conference, and I really like listening to Kyle Shanahan talk. I think he's a guy that's intense. I think he's a guy that really knows what he's doing. He's one of the best offensive minds in all of football. You can make an argument Kyle Shanahan is the best coach in the NFL, all things considered. Just his play calling, overall knowledge of the offense, ability to utilize players to their max. Kyle Shanahan really does all those things. I think them getting Christian McCaffrey, I think, was big. I think it really made this offense more dynamic. I think it really put a lot of pressure on opposing defenses now because you have to. I know Samuel was hurt a little bit, but you have to really account for Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. So that's big. And then the big thing with the San Francisco 49ers, you're gonna have the three quarterback kind of competition here. So it seems like he talks Brock Purdy's got the head up in the competition, but it's interesting all the rumblings there are that maybe Sam Darnold could be the guy. I think that's interesting. I think that Sam Darnold, he's been okay. He's a guy he's had an okay career with all things considered, ups and downs. But is he really, at the end of the day, is he a better option than Brock Purdy? No, but we will see. It sounds like Kyle Shanahan is a fan of what Brock Purdy can do, and he's been a fan of Brock Purdy going all the way back to when he was at USC back in 2016, 2017. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how it unfolds there. We'll see if they choose to keep all three guys. We'll see if a trade is made. I know there's been Trey Lance trade rumors. So, but yeah, talking to Trey Lance, he seems like he's a positive guy. It seems like he's kind of embracing the situation, embracing the competition. You know, this was his job last year at this time. Shanahan was talking about they were getting him all first team reps. So it's got to be humbling for Trey Lance. Obviously, that injury had to be frustrating, but hopefully he sees some light, made the most of this situation, and is rehabbed and is getting after it. Brock Purdy's health is interesting too. Does he start this season on the PUP list? I think is that the big question mark with Brock Purdy. So the 49ers, super talented roster. I mean, Fred Warner is the best linebacker in football. They've done a really good job of acquiring talent. You know, it wasn't too long ago that this 49ers team was really an embarrassment to watch. I remember the one year, it was 2016, their rush defense was one of the worst in the NFL. I remember I still have memories of Zeke in his rookie year running all over this defense. So the 49ers as an organization have come a long way, and it's really cool that they've established some stability under Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. So 49ers going to be really good. I think I'm not sure if they were my initial Super Bowl pick last year. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick them to go to the Super Bowl this year, but they're definitely going to be in the mix. And you know, the one knock I've had against the 49ers, I thought they haven't done as good a job of drafting. Like, I thought they've kind of stretched on some guys. Like they definitely had some misses. Like Trey Sermon really was a miss. I know Sermon was still, what was he, a third or fourth round guy, but a miss nonetheless. He's no longer with the team. Hufanga was a guy they hit on sixth round, and so they've had kind of been one of those teams that they've had some like later round hits, but they've also not really done as good of a job drafting in the early rounds. But yeah, I mean, I guess I say that Drake Jackson's been pretty good, but you feel like, you know, they've kind of missed out. Like the guy from South Carolina, Javon Kinlaw. It just really hasn't worked out thus far. Maybe we'll see. I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, they did in free agency bringing in Javon Hargrave. I think was big. I think he's a nice complement to Armstead and Bosa and the pieces they already have on their defensive line. So Hargrave, yeah, a guy that can get off the ball quickly, good against the run, does have some pass rushing ability, can bat down passes. So Hargrave's got a good all-around skill set. This was a guy that the Eagles didn't really want to lose, but he's going to find, I think he's going to find a role here in San Francisco, and I think he does make an impact. And I think he does improve this defense that is already really good. So we'll talk to Philadelphia Eagles. And so the Philadelphia Eagles made a pick in this draft that I really like. Tyler Steen from Alabama, second round. So Steen was a guy who was kind of forgotten about on the Alabama offensive line, and I say that because they had some guy the years prior. They had some guys go higher. So people thought higher of Jedrick Wills in years prior. Who's the guy? Evan Neal. Tyler Steen was a guy, former transfer from Vanderbilt, and he came in, and people like Steen. He had a good year, but he was kind of, now you don't want to call him a one-year wonder, but it was 1 year where he was good, and then people started, as the draft process went along, people were like, yeah, Tyler Steen, he looks the part. Who was this guy? A transfer from Vanderbilt, really 1 full year starting in Alabama, and you're like, yeah, Tyler Steen, really nice season for Alabama. Really was a key piece to the Alabama offensive line having success. So you look at Tyler Steen, and as more and more as the draft process went along, you saw him more and more of some of the top offensive tackles. I think some people had him 4 or 5 offensive tackles. I think that's what I had him, 4th or 5th. I didn't watch a lot of offensive tackles, but I did watch Steen's tape, and I was really impressed by him. Arland Scouting has him projected to start at right guard, so this could be a really, really good offensive line again. We'll see if Steen can even help bolster this offensive line even to a higher level than it was last year. I know that would be hard to do, but if he could do that, then man, this is a scary, scary good offensive line potentially, as it was last year. So I was listening to a Jalen Hurts talk, and Jalen Hurts, he's a well-spoken guy. Sounds like he's hungry. Seems like a guy that's is very humble, just wants to work. It seems like this is a guy. Jalen Hurts to me strikes me as a guy who he doesn't say a whole lot because he knows deep down the work he's putting in. So I think he kind of, to me, the Eagles pay him all that money. To me, it really is because Jalen Hurts kind of is the identity of what the Eagles are building here. They are a team that they want to just put their head down, not be flashy, not have a bunch of outspoken, big ego, big personalities. They just they want guys like Jalen Hurts that just work, get after it, help us produce we want high end talent. We want guys that just lunch pill to work every day. Just get after it. Don't rub it in. Don't make a fool of yourself. Being overly cocky. Not that there's obviously some outspoken guys in the NFL, which is fine. But the Eagles, it seems like they don't really want as many guys like that. And I know taking Jalen Carter kind of gave them some publicity for bad reasons because of the incident, but to me, Jalen Carter, he's not really a overly cocky, like outspoken, wants a lot of attention type of guy. To me, I think Jalen Carter, if he is focused, he's a guy that's kind of like Jalen Hurts, just wants to get after it. Nakobe Dean is another guy, a guy that loved football at Georgia. So I think the Eagles did a good job of paying Jalen Hurts, a guy that fits the identity of what they want, and then just continuing to bring in top-end talent. It's cool. It's cool to listen to Howie Roseman, how devoted he is to bringing in top-end talent in this roster. That is really what this guy is on a mission to. And it seems like football is his purpose, his passion in life, and he's done just a fantastic job of, first, one thing is trial and error, too. If you notice, Roseman was making some mistakes earlier in his career, and then now later in his career, it seems like he's done a better job of not having as many misses. And I think his goal is, let's take some swings for the fences. Let's dedicate so much time and resources getting taking risks on guys that are top-end athletes. Like, you look this year, they got Keely Ringo in the 4th round. Like, Ringo, yeah, there's some stiffness to his game, but Ringo, former 5-star recruit, that a guy that has some upside athletically, if you can get the most out of the skill set, or some of his positive traits, because Ringo's a guy that you're going to have to focus on his positive traits, and those are straight line speed and size. That is the bottom line of Keely Ringo's game, and I think that's Howie Roseman. He wants guys that can we take? Let's take guys with top end level traits. Maybe, and then these are the guys that, maybe are, high risk, high reward, kind of like Jalen Carter. I know Jalen Carter probably doesn't have a low 4, but he does have a high ceiling. So to me, that's what Jalen Hurts is. This guy who, during the draft evaluation, I don't think a lot of people were saying Jalen Hurts is a wow you guy with his arm strength, but he is a guy that can make accurate throws. He's improved as a passer every year in college. So the Eagles were like, you know what? Even though second round, even though there is some question marks about Jalen Hurts, this is a guy who is going to get after it and work, and he's devoted to improving. And to me, that fits. They asked, back to the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, they asked Kyle Shanahan what it takes to identify a good college quarterback that's going to be good in the NFL, or something along those lines. And it's kind of hard, because some guys traits in college make them good, and some guys traits in the NFL, or it doesn't always translate to the NFL. But it seems like guys like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, these are guys that just you see like some hunger to get better. The NFL I've always said is where talent can get you to the NFL, but do you have, like, the NFL is a combination of talented guys who have the psychopathic, the drive, every day, get after it mentality. That's the NFL. It's a mix of those guys, and then a lot of guys that get weeded out are guys who just have freakish talent, but just average to adequate work ethic. And a lot of those guys tend to get weeded out of the NFL, even if they do find success for a year or two, or some of them were first-round picks. But, I kind of went off on a tangent there. But, the Eagles, certainly a high-end talent. Like the 49ers, it's going to be a team it's going to be a really, really tough out in the NFC, and a team whoever makes the playoffs, and this is a team that you just do not want to see in the playoffs. I know the Lions my Detroit Lions will be in the mix for making the playoffs. The Eagles are a team that would be a nightmare scenario. It would be a really tough game, but we'll see what happens with the Eagles. Certainly things still pointing in the right direction, even after a year with the narrow loss in the Super Bowl. So I was talking about the Tennessee Titans, and the one thing I wanted to touch on with the Titans, I wanted to talk about one player who's been kind of forgotten about, but a guy who once upon a time, a couple years ago, was a first-round pick, and a guy who a lot of people said had a lot of upside, and that's Caleb Farley, their cornerback. Now, Caleb Farley not projected to start this year. He's a guy that's dealt with some injuries, ACL in year 1, and then this past year, injuries, and then when he's been on the field, though, just has looked a little lost. Has just a lot of the traits in college they've carried over somewhat, but he doesn't seem to like the play. He doesn't seem to play as fast in the NFL. I think part of that's because he's thinking a lot, but even then, I think he's not as fluid of an athlete as I thought. What's weird with Caleb Farley is a lot of the traits you see in college translate to the NFL. So, or almost pretty much all of them. To me, it's maybe the injury has made him lose a step, number one. Maybe the back thing, the Tiger Woods back injury, maybe that's caused him to be a little more stiff. Now, I remember him being a little more, having a little better agility in college. So, to me, I think those are all things that are working against Caleb Farley right now. We'll see if he gets a little more confident. Can he boost his play speed? Because he is fast. You see him. He still has the long speed. I mean, this guy that reportedly ran like a 4.2. So Caleb Farley, I think, I'm not giving up on him, but to me, this is a year, if he doesn't show anything, especially if he has limited snaps, then it's just, you just kind of have to write him off as a bust. And, Caleb Farley kind of goes down the lines of, the Titans not the best team at drafting. They had the one guy, from Georgia, was it a first round pick from Georgia? What was that, in 2021? The guy had never played for the Titans. And Caleb Farley, first round guy. You knew it was a risk at the time, but you knew the reward with Caleb Farley, to be fair. You knew the upside this guy had. I mean, a couple years ago coming out, some people had him ranked above Patrick Surtain as the best corner for the 2021 NFL draft, believe it or not. And it hasn't worked out. So we hope we can see some signs of progress from Caleb Farley now in his third season already. But yeah, Titans added DeAndre Hopkins. So my question with this is, how much does DeAndre Hopkins help this offense? It's going to help somewhat. It's going to take some pressure off Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's they're not going to have to. Without the signing of Hopkins, you knew this team was going to be. They always feature Derrick Henry, but you knew they really were going to feature Derrick Henry, like probably carry even more of the workload. And Derrick Henry, he's aging for a running back, so hopefully DeAndre Hopkins can really open up another level of this passing game. You still have Treylon Burks, a young guy who hopefully you see a little more improvement of this year. So Hopkins, Treylon Burks, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill coming back. So the Titans offense on paper looks pretty good, but once you start to talk about it, Derrick Henry getting a little older, Hopkins older, is this the year he really starts to take some steps back? An offensive line that really was not that good. I know they did add Peter Skoronski, but he is going to be a rookie, even though I think he's a guy that's a plug-and-play starter who's got some upside. So when you looking at the Titans roster on paper, it's one of those. It's a roster where I know you can't. This is not obviously. This is I don't know. This may be silly to say, but this is a roster. If you looked at it on paper a couple years ago, you'd be wow. But now fast forward a few years ago with an older Derrick Henry with some more miles on him, older DeAndre Hopkins, and you're like, yeah, could be. Things could come together. Things, could fall apart. And that's why the Titans, to me, the Titans are kind of one of those teams where it's kind of like a 50-50 call, meaning, they land heads this year. Heads, good scenario. Everything comes together. Hopkins is healthy, looks more like the guy from a couple years ago. Derrick Henry continues to stay healthy, can carry a heavy workload. The offensive line is bolstered by Peter Skoronski, and they end up having a good season. The Titans are back in the playoffs. Maybe they reach the divisional or the conference. Or you could have a season where Hopkins, Henry take a step back. You have a few other things go their way. Maybe Tannehill struggles with turnovers, interceptions, and just not as sharp, and maybe you have some key injuries on defense, and maybe your defense takes a step back. So I feel like there's that one of those two scenarios. I feel like I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like if you're with the Tennessee Titans, I feel like you're in or you're out. I feel like there's not a lot of in between. Maybe that now that I say that, maybe that is the in between. Maybe the Titans are like a 6-7. 8-win team, even though they're an 8-win team where they're not really in playoff contention. So Tennessee Titans are going to be an interesting team. I know Vegas odds has them being projected to be like the 10th or 11th, or no, I think 8th or 9th worst team in the NFL. So I don't know what would that equate to. So probably a 6-7 win team. So maybe I kind of jinxed it there. Maybe they, instead of boom or bust, maybe they do kind of finish somewhere. I say middle of the pack, somewhere like lower middle of the pack, or just below the middle. Maybe they're like the 11th or 12th worst best team, or 11th or 12th worst team. But yeah, the Houston Texans. So I'll say this: the Houston Texans, even if this is not a good football team, they will be fascinating to watch because C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson. It's going to be those are just two big names, and those are two guys that are going to get fans excited, even if they don't really make an impact year one. So that brings me to my next question: who, Stroud or Anderson, is one of those guys going to make an impact year one? I think Will Anderson will be a good player. I don't know if he'll ever become an elite, feared edge rusher. That is the main burning question with Will Anderson as far as his career is concerned. I think with C.J. Stroud's going to give you a high floor. This is a guy that can complete passes, short. His short mid-range accuracy is excellent. That's what C.J. Stroud. That's where he made a living at Ohio State. This guy, especially mid-range, it looks easy for him. Throws across the field, can throw across his body. Ken makes plays on the run, can throw on the run. I don't think he's ever going to be elite at it. I don't think C.J. Stroud kind of has I feel like, I'm trying to think of a comparison for C.J. Stroud. To me, C.J. Stroud has the feel of a guy who's going to be in the league for a long time. I think that he may have some really good seasons, but I think you will see some seasons where he's just kind of okay. To me, maybe like a Carson Palmer type of career. I think there's going to be years where a lot of things come together. I guess the point I'm trying to make is kind of a lot like Ohio State. I think with good talent around, he's a guy that will really shine with good talent around him. Not that he'll be bad with bad talent around him, but I think he's a guy that he needs with good pieces in place, just because of what he can do as far in the intermediate accuracy. I think that's what's key. Like, look at Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that does well with talent around him. Garoppolo is accurate in short to intermediate range. It's long range. It's making throws on the run, overall athleticism. That's, to me, I guess C.J. Stroud, I think, could be a little better version of Jimmy Garoppolo. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that with the Texans. I think another burning question is Derek Stingley. So Derek Stingley, if you remember, was the third overall pick 2022 to the Houston Texans, and Derek Stingley he's a really good football player, or he's a good football player as of now. But the thing about Derek Stingley is, when the Houston Texans drafted him, and I know they believe this, Derek Stingley still has a high upside if you were looking purely at his athletic traits. Now, like I talked about drive and wanting to be great, how you kind of have two types of NFL players, guys that have a good athletic skill sets and just have the psychopath, outstanding, get after it work ethic, and then you got the guys that talent can get them to the NFL. You hope that Derek Stingley's not on the side of a guy who has all the talent, but really has just had adequate to good enough work ethic to get him to this point. You hope that's not the case with Derek Stingley. You hope that Derek Stingley is driven. And when I've listened to Derek Stingley talk, I think about, to me, I never get the vibe, sadly, that this is a guy that is intrinsically motivated and driven to be great. To me, it kind of goes to that one debate like that Dan Patrick was talking about. Like, was Tom Brady destined to be a good quarterback, or did he will himself? Derek Stingley, with his bloodline, was he a guy that was just destined to be an NFL corner? Probably, but is he a guy that's... The next question is he a guy that's going to will himself to be a great corner? I talk Derek Stingley quite a bit on this channel. Derek Stingley's a guy that fascinates. I've always been fascinated by a guy who was with freakish athletic traits. That's why I tend to gravitate towards Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons, Sewell. Ironically, all those guys were in the same draft class. Trent Williams. Some of the freakish natures in the NFL I tend to gravitate to, because they're being an athlete myself, I was always impressed by the guys that were just freaking natures, because they can do things. That's kind of why, maybe that makes me a decent scout, because I can see guys that can do things that I just can't. And I see that with Derek Stingley. You see the hip fluidity, you see the movement skills. Now, he's a guy like Caleb Farley. He doesn't his skill set hasn't translated necessarily as well as I thought. But it's translate. You see a lot of the flashes, and I guess the thing, people during the draft were going back to Derek Stingley's freshman year at LSU, which people don't really reference that as much anymore because that was a long time ago. But the point being was that was a year where everything was working for Derek Stingley. I mean, the team was really good. Derek Stingley just seemed confident. He was a freshman, so he was getting tested a lot, so he was giving up a few plays, but he was also making a lot of plays. 6 interceptions that year to be exact. So to me, you hope that was not the last of the bright lights in the high-end play was the 2019 season for Stingley. And you hope that the flashes in year one are built upon and you really see the guy – you see a guy that's hungry and the guy that can make as many plays in 2019 in college as in 2023. So let's talk Green Bay Packers. So Green Bay, what I love about the Green Bay Packers, I love how Rashawn Gary has developed into a good player. If you remember, Rashawn Gary was a big-time recruit. You talk big-time recruits, freak athletes. Rashawn Gary, former five-star, number one recruit coming out of high school back in 2016. And Rashawn Gary in Michigan didn't really have the production most people thought. But Rashawn Gary in the NFL, he's a guy that it sounded like from what I heard has always been driven to be great. Sounds like his work ethic is outstanding. So Rashawn Gary, a guy that in the NFL, I know he was hurt a little bit this year, seems like a guy that's devoted to get better and better. And it seems like he has worked on some things that were somewhat of weaknesses for him at Michigan as far as quickness off the snap, just better feel for pass rushing overall. It seems like Rashawn Gary knows when to attack. It seems like there's times he's going against lesser tackles and he knows how to attack them. Seems like he's using some more counters now. He's gotten more stout against the run, and I see even more burst and explosion, especially even into the backfield than I did at Michigan. So, yeah, I really like Rashawn Gary being a Michigan fan. I'm happy to see him having success for the Packers, even though being a Lions fan, it's I was hoping he'd go to a different team. Obviously, the Lions did pass on him. Maybe the Lions should have went Gary in that draft, but that is obviously too late now. But yeah, and then they signed a quarterback today. They signed McGaw from the USFL. So Green Bay going to head into training camp with 4 guys on the roster: Jordan Love, Sean Clifford, Danny Etling, and now McGaw. So it'll be fun to see who or which quarterbacks they keep. I think Sean Clifford was an interesting pick. I thought Sean Clifford was a guy that was going to go undrafted. To me, Sean Clifford he kind of fits the mold of a good college quarterback who doesn't really have enough high-end traits to succeed in the NFL. But I think Sean Clifford, if he works hard and really wins this coaching staff over and this team through his leadership and experience now to this point, he's an older guy. I think that Clifford can be a backup in the NFL for a long time, kind of one of those backups that hangs around. Maybe he does get some playing time when a veteran starter gets hurt. But to me, Sean Clifford, I don't think there's a lot of room for as far as if you're talking a good starter, but I think he's a guy that can he push Jordan Love in this quarterback situation? I think so. So and then Danny Etling, guy that played at LSU a few years back. Etling, some good, some bad in college, but a guy who's got some size, and a guy like Clifford, just a lot of experience, older guy now. So yeah, we'll see what happens with the quarterbacks in Green Bay. Let's transition to talking about the Detroit Lions now. So the Detroit Lions, I'll say this. The Detroit Lions, this is going to be a good team this year. Lions are going to make the playoffs. I'm not sure how far they're going to go, but I'll throw that out there. The Lions are going to make the playoffs. Everything is moving in the right direction for the Lions. I think a lot of things are going to come into place. I think this defense is going to be improved. I guess the worry is the defense doesn't really improve. Jared Goff takes a step back. Jamison Williams being out 6 games hurts them. I know they didn't have him last year, but this is a guy who no more DJ Charks. You're kind of missing that. You need that outside presence. So those 6 weeks with him out could really hurt him. And no DeAndre Swift, but Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be really good. I think Jahmyr Gibbs could have the type of impact right away that if he stays healthy, I think a lot of people would just forget about DeAndre Swift. And I don't mean that as disrespect toward DeAndre Swift, because people really like DeAndre Swift, but I think there's a lot of people that question that pick. If Jahmyr Gibbs just gets off to a fast start, not only fast start, but if he has a really big year, I think a lot of people will just almost forget about DeAndre Swift. Be like, they'll see him in Philadelphia and be like, oh yeah, he used to play for us. Now I think Swift might have a good year for the Eagles, but Jahmyr Gibbs, if you remember, the regime now did not draft DeAndre Swift. So this guy that Brad Holmes really wanted, it sounds like some teams had Jahmyr Gibbs at a higher grade than DeAndre Swift. So Jahmyr Gibbs in a position to get a heavy workload. You got David Montgomery, who's a good complement to Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs more of the speedster burst, even though Gibbs has some toughness and some power in his game. Don't get that confused. He can bring that element. Obviously, that is more of David Montgomery's skill set. Run you over, break tackles, play strength, power. Those are all the ways to describe David Montgomery. So David Montgomery, no slouch either, but Jahmyr Gibbs, the Lions, Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, the NFL has become about big plays, and their vision is this is a guy who can create big plays for us. We just hope he stays on the field because DeAndre Swift could create big plays for us. We think Jahmyr Gibbs not only can bring the playmaking aspect, but with the speed he has, can break some serious big-time 60, 70-plus yard games, and those are the game-changing plays that can win, that can be the deciding factor in a lot of the close games in the NFL. So I'm sure that's a lot of the Lions' thinking was with Jahmyr Gibbs. Because you look at the Lions last year, Jamal Williams was good, but you can't, I was listening to Brian Kelly's press conference yesterday, and even at the college level, he's talking about explosive plays. Everyone's talking about explosive plays. So you look at the Lions last year, and Jamal Williams, was steady Eddie. I think Williams did average 4 yards per carry and had 17, 18 touchdowns. Even though the offense was steady Eddie, you want some more explosive play. You can't have long drives in the NFL because defenses are too good. You're going to end up finishing with 3 points too many times. So you just bringing that explosive play element is going to be a big added bonus for the Lions. And David Montgomery I think he's going to be their guy. To me, I think they're just in comparing the two guys, Gibbs and Montgomery, I think bring a lot higher upside than DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. Even though DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, going into the season last year, I was ecstatic to have both those guys. But it's crazy that the Lions in the offseason could bring in two guys that have higher upside than that. That is that's pretty cool, honestly. Even though it did come at the expense of the 12th overall pick. But I mean, if Jahmyr Gibbs goes on to, it's early. It's way too early to kind of be saying stuff like this. But if Jahmyr Gibbs goes on to have a multiple Pro Bowl type of career, and he's the main reason why the Lions win some playoff games and maybe reach a Super Bowl. Obviously, winning a Super Bowl is a different story, but this is a team that's fairly close to making a playoff run. So if he's a part of a lot of that success and you see him have 3,000-4,000-yard season, double-digit touchdowns, then I don't think anyone will care that he was the 12th overall pick. But yeah, with the Lions, What do we see from Aiden Hutchinson year 2? So Aiden Hutchinson I've kind of talked about this before. I kind of want to reiterate it. So Aiden Hutchinson had a season. He had the season like most people thought was his floor. Okay. So if you remember, that was a lot of the talk why Jacksonville didn't want to take Aiden Hutchinson, because they believed he would be a good, well, they didn't say this, but a lot of people thought Jacksonville was kind of buying into the narrative that Aiden Hutchinson was going to be a good player for a long time, but not necessarily have the upside to be a great player, like a consistent, like 15-plus sack a year guy. Kind of like, there was comparisons to Nick Bosa. I talked to Nick Bosa earlier. There wasn't a lot of people saying that he had the upside of Nick Bosa, even though he was compared to Nick Bosa. But can he be that? Can he take another step this year? Like if Hutchinson, let's say he goes to 12 sacks this year, then will we be saying, in 12 sacks and looks even better, then will we be saying, wow, this is a guy who year 3, 4, maybe later in his career, the next few years, we can be expecting like the 16 to 18 sack type of season. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is Hutchinson, maybe he ends up just being a good player, but does he have a couple years where he's like extra dominant? I mean, it's really interesting. I know his career is still, I know he's still a young guy. There's a lot to, we're gonna find a lot of answers to the question I've posed of, can Hutchinson be an elite player? But I think that, to me, a lot of the dominant edge rushers, you see it right away, and I think it was too much of flashes with Aiden Hutchinson as opposed to consistency. So I guess that would be the case for him to improve his sack total, like I touched on, 12. I think if you combine the consistency, the high-end flashes, like the 3-sack game against Washington, and then some of the consistency that he played with later in the year when he started to play better. So, yeah, Aiden Hutchinson, certainly a guy to watch. We'll see if he can improve his game. Had a really nice rookie year. We'll see if he turns it up a notch in 2023. But, yeah, so let's talk the Arizona Cardinals. So, the Cardinals, a team that many people are projecting to be a bad football team. We'll see. We'll see if they actually do finish with the worst record like they're projected, and we'll see if they do have the first overall pick. We'll see how high the Caleb Williams hype gets. I know that's really, at this point, it's actually kind of silly to be talking about that a little bit, because it's so far away, even though it is fun to talk about. I know I've sound hypocritical, so I've done some mock drafts, but tying the guy with the number one, tying the top player, the top quarterback with the team that's projected to finish worst it seems like very rarely that happens. Like Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville, that a couple years ago, but last year it seemed like, I know Houston didn't have the first pick, but it seemed like Bryce Young was destined to be a Houston Texan. Like I still see the pictures, what the Photoshop of Bryce Young in a Texans uniform. So I sometimes maybe, sometimes I think that Bryce Young, the Texans took Bryce Young because it just seemed like the Texans and Bryce Young seemed to be associated with each other for such a long time that I think that's why a lot of the betting didn't have the Texans taking Stroud. I think a lot of people just their immediate affiliation when they thought of the Texans was with Bryce Young. So yeah, I think with the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison would be an outstanding pick, but I think that because they're projected to have the first and second pick, but I think what are the odds statistically they have the first and second pick, but hypothetically, Marvin Harrison would be a really nice pick because him and Caleb Williams would probably be the best, would be a good pairing, not just because they're both elite quarterback and wide receiver, but I think it'd be a pick where I wouldn't overthink it if I was a team. Like wide receiver probably might not be on the highest list of priorities. Edge rusher could be in the mix. Jared Verse is going to be one of the better edge rushers. Trice from Washington. But to me, a quarterback seems like the quarterback wide receiver combo just seems like the move, and it seems like that would really just create headlines and a lot of the hype for the Cardinals and excitement. It kind of be similar to what the Texans did when they got the second and third pick. The hype and excitement for the Cardinals going into the 2024 season with those guys would be exciting. Because look at the Cardinals this year. This is a roster that I know Kyler Murray is exciting, but this seems like this is a roster that just isn't exciting anymore. Like the offensive line is just their offensive line just might be average at best. Wide receiver core, Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown, you thought early on in his career maybe there was something that could really resonate and develop there, and he's just been okay. Rondale Moore, okay. So it's just a lot of the Cardinals has become one of those rosters. It's just kind of when you look at it. I know that. Defensively, Isaiah Simmons. It's been a little bit of a disappointment, but I guess Simmons hasn't been bad. And then you look at a guy like Marco Wilson. That was a guy, Marco Wilson. You thought early on there was some upside there, and he just kind of been okay. So Isaiah Simmons, Marco Wilson, and then even Zaven Collins. It's just okay. It's just too much okay with the Arizona Cardinals roster, and just okay and one okay and a good quarterback. It just that's up and down. It is a recipe for not having success. But they did some nice things though. In this past draft, Paris Johnson I think is a guy that's going to start right away at tackle. Johnson brings a good skill set. He fits the mold of the modern offensive tackle just because he's such an athletic tackle. And then they brought in Michael Wilson, the receiver I like from Stanford. I think Michael Wilson's game will translate well to the NFL. It's a guy that can get off the line of scrimmage. He's got quick feet to help him separate against man coverage. So Michael Wilson, I think, will make an impact in the NFL. I think will be a solid receiver. I'm not sure what his upside is, but I think this is a guy that even if he doesn't really take off this year and he get like a ton of snaps, ton of targets, I think you'll see flashes of what Michael Wilson can do, and I think he'll be a strong contributor for this Arizona Cardinals team, for whatever that means if they are bad, but a contributor nonetheless. So let's talk Seattle Seahawks. So Seattle, I think the question I have is Devin Witherspoon going to be good, or is he going to be really like Sauce Gardner type of elite in year one? That is the question I have with Devin Witherspoon. Devin Witherspoon, a phenomenal athlete and a guy that you talk about drive and an edge to be good. It's a guy that was a 2-star recruit coming out of high school, a guy that humbling journey, struggled with academics, had to play at a smaller, it was like junior college, and then transferred to Illinois and was humbly and played on special teams for a couple of years. I think that's cool that Devin Witherspoon, his journey, started playing football later in high school. It seems like everything's been earned with Devin Witherspoon. So it seems like this guy really has an edge to be great. To me, it kind of reminds me of, can this be like Seattle when they drafted Earl Thomas? Can you be getting a guy who, he's going to be a good player? It's a guy that, like Earl Thomas, made plays, like interceptions, big highlight plays, just like Devin Witherspoon. The guy's going to be good. You made a good pick, but is this a guy that's going to walk in day one and really change the tone on this defense? And that's what Earl Thomas did at Texas. You saw the year after Earl Thomas left, Texas went down, but you saw Earl Thomas, he looked like he belonged in the NFL. This is a guy that was hungry to make an impact. Devin Witherspoon sounds like he's a guy that looks like he belongs in the NFL. And not just like looks like he belongs, like he's going to be okay out there, like he's going to hold his own. This is a guy that looks like he's going to walk in and set the tone and look to thrive and make plays, big hits, interceptions. So to me, Devin Witherspoon was a tremendous pick, and sounds like many teams. There was rumors that some NFL teams had Devin Witherspoon their highest overall graded player. So yeah, I can't wait to watch Devin Witherspoon play this year. I'm excited to see what he brings to the table this year. And then they drafted Jackson Smith-Njigba too. Smith-Njigba should have a really nice season. I like his skill set. Smith-Njigba, guy that knows how to run routes, set up defensive backs. Smith-Njigba arguably has been the best wide receiver on the Ohio State football team in the last few years, which is saying a lot because they've had guys like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. So yeah, Smith-Njigba, good hands. I mean, route running guru. So this is a guy who Smith-Njigba, to me, I think he'll fit in this Seattle offense. I think he is a good complement to DK Metcalf, a bigger physical receiver, and Tyler Lockett, a smaller, shifty guy. I think you keep Metcalf and Lockett on the outside. You plug Smith-Njigba to the slot, and I think it is a recipe to keep this offense potent. And Geno Smith had a nice year last year. You hope he continues to play like that and find ways to get Smith-Njigba the ball. And hopefully the Seattle offensive line is continues to be anchored by Lucas and Charles Cross, the two rookies they drafted offensive tackle. You hope those guys continue to get better, play at a high level, be good bookend tackles. And I like that Seattle has finally improved this offensive line. It seemed like for years Seattle was trying, I guess not trying too hard, but trying to really get not just a good offensive line, which they have now, but a solid cohesive unit. And now they really have a good offensive line. I think it's fun to see, and I think this team has a chance to be really good, and the offense has a chance to be good as well. But yeah, so we'll talk. Let's talk the Commanders for a minute. So yeah, the Commanders. This is a team where I think the Commanders could fall off this year, and I've wanted to see them get a quarterback for a while now. I think Washington a couple years ago with a quarterback would have been interesting. I love that Washington paid Daron Payne. This to me, you had to pay Daron Payne because Daron Payne, even though he wanted, forget exactly how much money, but they did pay him fairly big money. So to me, you look around this Washington team, you're kind of iffy on Chase Young. You still got Jonathan Allen. So you feel like you have enough where if you sign Daron Payne, even though he wants a lot of money, you can keep a strong offense, at least have a strong offensive line to hold your hat on. So I guess that's the argument for Washington not really falling off a cliff, so to speak, is that by keeping Daron Payne on the team, at least you have one unit that you know is going to be at least good. It may be great. It may be potentially elite if Chase Young gets back and looks like the guy from a couple years ago. So at least Washington can hang their hat on the defensive line. In Washington was an example of a couple years ago of why winning up front is so important. I mean, if you look at their team was better a couple years ago, but to me, they really hung their hat on that on that really outstanding defensive line. So just wanted to touch on that. Thanks for tuning in to the Brant Partial Show. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.